Mama, and today I'm going to be cooking a Jewish brisket. It's a very versatile, tough cut of meat, so it needs to be cooked slow and low for a long period of time or braised. So today we are going to be braising it. Braising simply means that we're cooking it in a liquid for a long period of time. So my traditional Jewish beef brisket is something that is great during the winter months. It's very similar to stew. I am going to take about a cup of flour and I'm putting it in a large baking dish. The reason is that I'm going to be dredging my brisket in the flour and a little bit of seasoning prior to braising it. This is going to kind of lock and seal the flavors in. This is garlic powder and paprika, and have a little bit of sea salt and black pepper. Here we go. Just press it in. Rub it. Now while I'm doing this, I'm going to heat up a large saute pan with a couple tablespoons of olive oil, nice and hot. And I'm going to give that brisket a good sear on all the sides. And I have waiting in the wings, which is why my eyes are so red, 3 onions that are coarsely chopped. These are 3 medium-sized onions. If you've got huge onions, you could cut it down to 2. But after we brown our brisket, we are going to saute the onions and put them on top. So now I am going to place my brisket in my pan, fat side down. As you can see, the brisket is quite large in comparison to my saute pan, but this is the largest pan that I have, so it's gonna have to do. And I'm just giving it a light sprinkle. So now I flipped it, and come take a look. It's got a nice golden brown color, and it's going to get brown on the other side. I give it about 5 minutes per side, and in the meanwhile, while I'm waiting for that to get nice and golden brown, here I have some homemade stock that was frozen that I am simply defrosting on the stove. And once that's defrosted, I'm going to add a small can of diced tomatoes to it, and I am going to add the remainder of my flour and seasoning mix. And that is going to create for us a nice thick sauce to braise the brisket in. So now I've flipped over the brisket to the non-fatty side, and I'm letting it sear and get a nice crust. Come take a look at it. It's just starting to get nice and brown. I am going to just flip this over and really check it. And also, I wasn't 100% pleased with the crust that I got on the fat side, so I'm going to give that another minute. In the meanwhile, while I'm waiting for my stock to completely defrost, I'm going to add to it a can of small diced tomatoes, just adding that directly to the stock. This is going to make up our liquid, and the liquid is what we use to braise it in, and we are going to be braising it in the oven. Once the stock is completely defrosted and starts to heat up, I'm going to whisk in the remainder of this flour mixture that we use. The reason that I'm going to do that is to thicken it. Now our brisket is ready. It is very hot. Move it over here. My countertop is granite. If you have a Formica countertop, do not place it on your countertop, or you will have trouble. Fat side down, and adding my onions. Coarsely chopped onions. It's part of the seasoning. It will be delicious. So right now what I'm doing is I'm sauteing the onions until they become soft and clear. And I'm going to add about a half a cup of the flour and seasoning mixture that I use to form the crust on top of the brisket to my stock, which has a small can of diced tomatoes. And I just hit it with the whisk till I don't have any lumps. So I'm adding this to my brisket, and I am going to add my softened onions over top. A little bit of kosher salt going on top, and I cover it, and I put it into a 350 oven, covered for about 90 minutes. Okay, so we've got about 45 seconds on our timer. We had the brisket in for an hour and a half, and we want to take a look at it. The kitchen smells absolutely wonderful. Come take a look. You see how it's reduced? Nicely reduced. And I'm just going to take a ladle and spoon some of the sauce on top. So what I want to do is I'm going to cover it back up for another 30 minutes and check back in 30 minutes. So it's been about another 20 minutes, and I want to just take a look at our brisket. And basically, I don't know if you can tell, but it is not falling apart. When I pull it, I want it to start to fall apart, and it is not doing that. We're at the 2-hour mark, and it still is going to require more time. I want to keep it covered until it starts to fall apart, and I'm turning it over to try to get the other side to sit more in the braising liquid. So I'm going to cover it back up and check on it in another 30 minutes. Okay, so it's been approximately 3 hours, and I think it's finally done. It was a really big cut. So you see, we're not going to eat this fat, just so you know. Just turn it over. But it's practically falling apart. See? It looks absolutely delicious. See how it falls apart? How we almost don't need to cut it? That's how we know it's done. The only thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over and clean the fat off once it cools. Alright, so I've just cleaned off all the fat. Here's the fat from the fat side, and I sliced it up. And now I hear my kids coming. I'm sure that they're going to come and run and be devouring it any minute now. Alright, so before I can even get it on the plate, everybody's going nuts for the brisket. Alright, we'll see you.